There is one thing that I find interesting. It's almost like a drinking game, and that is anytime you hear 360, take a shot. Because it's the morning, we can do espresso shots. But I want to bring out somebody who's going to help us get a real view as to what 360 means, especially in this social economy. So if you can help me, please welcome to the stage Nick Law, Creative Director at RGA. All right. Well, you know, I think we just jump right in because you like that. It's sort of this.
I'm going to get a workout. It's good for your core.
Yeah, what I said about Baratunde Thurston's session yesterday had me laughing so hard that I felt like I didn't need to do sit-ups for at least another week. And so I got my workout in. But let's jump into this. You surely have an opinion. That's why you're here, because I actually really respect it and admire your ability to just kind of call it as it is and share your thoughts. So what's your definition of 360? And then more importantly, what do you think that most folks are missing, especially in this social economy, about what it really means?
I think 360 is a misleading term, because I think that the big difference that I find now between the relationship I have with clients compared to 10 years ago is that every relationship is now bespoke. So because media can solve business problems, not just communicate, products, you have this sort of situation where every client has a different business problem, right? Because they're in different businesses, and so you sort of you will assemble a team that is specific to that problem, and then create assets that are specific to that problem. So the idea of checking off all of the media, so you sort of surround a problem, is not always appropriate. It'll depend on what the particular business problem is, how what the sort of brand qualities are. So I don't think there's any client that we have at RGA where we've got the same people doing the same work, across multiple clients. It's always sort of bespoke and curated and choreographed in a very particular way. So 360 is a framework that you can draw on, but engagement's rarely a 360. I think that if they are, then you're checking boxes.
Right. Well, we heard in the last session that really what advertising agencies are trying to do more, or now more than ever, is align not just the creative or the idea to just a creative idea or what everybody else is doing. As George mentioned, last year we talked at great length sort of the behind-the-scenes story of the Evian Roller Babies video and just how much work went to make that a viral initiative, but also how that initiative crossed over other media forms. But they had said what we're really trying to do now is get creative more in alignment with the strategy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's noble. But I want to hear from you as whether or not the brands that you're working with actually know what that strategy looks like as it applies to your definition of 360.
That'll depend on the client.
Yeah. Make a great sweeping generalization.
I think, again, it depends. So the problem with applying the sort of old framework to the new environment is that the old framework was this sort of waterfall process, because we were making templates. So if you sort of go into a relationship knowing that there are certain templates you can deliver based on the client's communication problems, whether it's a 30-second spot or a print ad or some DM or something, then the chances are that the handoff from thinking to making is going to be pretty simple. There's a mature industry out there that's been making TV spots for 50 years. They know how to do it. You get a good director, you get a good production company, you can go and enjoy craft services. It's probably going to be okay if your script is good and your strategy is good. So there is this sort of linear process in the old model that works really well because you always end up with a template. Now, in the new world, we're sort of inventing media as we go, and we're trying to solve across a myriad of contexts, not just people watching stuff, but people engaging with stuff, people transacting, people sharing. So that relationship between thinking and making is far more iterative. Now, this is stuff you hear from Silicon Valley all the time, right? This idea that you have to be iterative and that you fail often, and this it's true. And so therefore the relationship between strategy and execution becomes this blur. And I think that sometimes very small, seemingly tactical decisions have profound strategic consequences. So for example, with the fuel band, when we launched it, the accompanying app, smartphone app, just tracked your stuff, and the social stuff, the social hooks weren't completely mature. Soon after we launched it, we created a very simple feature, which was a leaderboard, right? So using Facebook to connect with all your friends that had fuel band, you could now see how you ranked, throughout the day and throughout the week against your friends. It seems like a simple sort of tactical decision, but it was, for me, that's a sort of profound strategic decision, because what it recognizes is that we consume media as a stream now, right? So how often we're waiting outside an elevator or waiting for a bus, we pick up our phone. It's almost like we can't bear a moment for ourselves anymore. We're sitting on the toilet, going through here, waiting for an interview. It's constant. We're with this sort of membrane of media around us. And so people are, the success of Instagram is the success of stream media consumption, right? So once we did this feature, all of a sudden, a device that people would look at and sync like twice a day became something that people obsessively were checking in on, right? And there's business ramifications, there's sort of behavioral ramifications to that. It's a simple tactical choice had a profound strategic thing. So the idea that you're going to get this great strategy fixed in the thinking before you even get to making, and that everything will be fine, is just bullshit. It doesn't happen anymore. I think it's more iterative. So planners or business consultants or whoever your strategic minds are, they don't hand off something and walk away.
Right.
They have a premise, you build it, and you see what happens, and then you respond to what happens.
But let me ask you something too, because in the last session as well, I mean, they hit something right on the head, and that is, we're often asked to just give them the template, and that template assumes that therefore you are permeating that stream. So if consumers are now focused on the stream, and as Carol said yesterday, they all have screen face, you're now trying to compete for attention in real time. You're trying to compete for moments, right? And when moments matter, then views become sort of like the metric, or clicks become the metric. Still sort of an old school way of thinking, but it's very real. You do have to compete for attention in real time. But then you push back in terms of saying, well, that's great, but what else can we do? I'd love to hear in terms of how you're seeing, not just RGA, but just advertising in general, the role that it now has to play back to the brand to help them rethink what their strategy should be, instead of just perpetually competing for the moment. I don't know that you can actually win that game, but how do you use the stream and think through strategies in the future to help people help you get into the stream?
So I think the sort of complication in all of this is that we have an industry that is, has a history of communicating and only communicating, using media to communicate, at a time when media just did that. It was a singular context. Now we have media that is multiple contexts. That is not just about viewing. It's about transacting or enabling or connecting with friends. So it's this three-dimensional media now. And if our job as marketers is to use media to get people's attention so people buy stuff, right? We're trying to get our clients to sell more products. Then just concentrating on one context, which is communication, will mean that ultimately, if you call yourself an advertising agency only, you'll become a boutique, right? You'll become a little narrative boutique that can't really own a client's business problems, because media can solve a lot more than just telling people something. So, so for me, the way to look at it is, in the center of everything we do is a product, right? So somewhere there's a client trying to sell something that we're trying to help them sell, and that's a product, whether it's software or a hardware or whatever. And then outside that product, more and more, there's this service layer, which is software, that decommoditizes these dumb objects and turns objects into experiences. So, and we see this in every industry. Software is just eating up every industry. It's enabling everything. And then outside of the service layer is communications, right? So there's three, and that center, the product, which is the center, often we can now be responsible for. We can create a product that a client can sell, because software does that, right? So we've got these three layers, the most superficial of which is the outside one, which is communications. And it always starts in the middle and works out. So So from an agency point of view, if we're practitioners in media, we should be thinking about all three, right? Because they're all connected, they're all one click away. And if we don't, then I think we're at risk of, as I said, becoming a boutique. The other thing is that in that outer layer of communications, historically, from a planning perspective, you're thinking about how to break through, right? Because as you say, you're trying to get people's attention. And breaking through is a particular mindset, it's a particular way of thinking, it's a particular way of looking at how people behave. But this, on the other side of the coin is where a real big opportunity is, and that is how do you fit in? And I don't think that, that culturally we have an industry that's thought about that, because we've been so busy trying to poke people in the eye, ambush them while they're watching the football, that we don't think about what makes people want to come back, right? So there needs to be this balance between fitting in and then breaking through. And if you can create something that becomes habitual, right, some sort of service or product which is, that really does transform a business, then you use communication to send people to that. Right. So then communication is no longer this sort of superficial, I'm going to try to make you feel good about a brand for this season. It becomes more profound than that. It's going to be, I'm going to enable this brand in a way where you won't be where you'll just like the brand more.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, that communications layer now becomes an engagement layer. Right. And it's not just about breaking through, but it's also getting people to come back. And that, I think, is where a lot of brands sort of miss the opportunity. They're really good at working with you to poke people in the eye. Maybe they do come back every now and then to check out the leaderboard. But that experience, I think, is something that's going to be much more profound than it is today. Especially, it's what we spent a lot of the time yesterday afternoon on. But you said something really interesting too. I hear in businesses, common business lingo is, what are we trying to solve for? And I don't know that I actually hear that enough in conversations about advertising and marketing. I actually tend to think that brands and agencies, just in a stereotypical assessment, suffer from what I call mediumalism, and that is sort of looking at the medium of the moment, or the mediums of the moment, and creating whatever is going to be such a hit or a smash on each one of those channels. And Google released some very interesting research earlier this year that showed how different people consume media differently on different devices. Right. And that the relationship between those devices, so if I have a smartphone, a tablet, a television, a laptop, that sometimes the relationship of how I consume media continues across those screens. Right. Sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes I might do something specific to that screen, do something differently for that screen. By the way, that Google research is free. It's something about multi-screening. But the idea is, if we suffer from mediumalism, and we are now having to build an engagement layer and create experiences, what does the world of advertising look like across all of these screens, and how do you create sort of a holistic and yet an independent experience across the screens?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because the group before were talking about, this golden age of television. I think it's true that the content on television is good, but I don't think that television is a great place to advertise anymore. I really don't. And I think it's because of that. I think whereas we used to either use a remote or get up and make a cup of tea or go to the bathroom when the ads came on, we now just pick up the other device, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I've seen many studies that sort of prove this, that the chances are while the ads are on, you're either fast forwarding through them because you've DVR'd them, or you're looking at your fantasy football team or something, right? So there's this. It's true that we are consuming more media than ever, but it's harder for media to manipulate us because we're manipulating the media, right? Mm-hmm. It's become that sort of relationship that we have. So I think that you use the word moment a lot, and I think that that's actually a good way to think about media, because media is just sort of, your consumption is this collection of moments. And as I was saying before, what distinguishes these moments now is that they're very different, right? Mm-hmm. So one moment I could be watching a YouTube video of some Korean kids lip-syncing a song. The next moment I could be buying the t-shirt that I saw one of the kids mm-hmm. wearing. Then I could be doing my banking. Then I could be checking my, the data from my wireless scale, see how much. I mean, there are all these right. different contexts. Or I could just be connecting with a friend. So whether you're sort of being entertained, or you're looking at a demonstration, or you're looking at information, all of those moments have a particular value that are very different but equally important. So the idea that the only way that you can get someone emotionally involved is by entertaining them is just bullshit. You know, a simple information about a drug that helps a cousin of mine who has a rare illness has a social value that you can't calculate, right? Simple information. Or a demonstration of something that I don't quite understand. I'd never figured out how to make an omelet, so I go to YouTube and figure. That has a huge, right, social value. So recognizing the nuances of these media moments becomes very important. But we come from an industry that is so fetishizes Hollywood and so wants to be that proxy for Hollywood that they think the only way that you can get someone engaged is to make them laugh. And the truth is that there are a lot of people out there that can do it better than us. Now there are there are instances where you can do that, but it's a hit game doing that, right? So do we really want to go up against Hollywood and the gaming industry and the Korean teenager? Sometimes we do, but then we have all these other opportunities and all these other media moments where people are looking for something very different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think one of the things I'm going to walk away with is stitching those moments together to create much more meaningful experiences, and also really, hopefully we think about creating that engagement layer and what that engagement layer looks like as media consumption starts to span multiple screens. It's your job to stitch everything together. Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.